What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. This week we have the end of an era, the last ESPN Plus Apex card. You know, it's going to be a little bit weird not having the awkward commercial break screen in between rounds and the 20,000 Dustin Poirier Bud Light ads, but who knows, we may just miss it. But Paramount Plus, that's going to be next year. We'll see how that goes, but I'm just going to skim this card. Let's be real, they put an absolute stinker on for the last Apex card for ESPN Plus. They weren't, going out with a bang by any means. These are all just kind of, what are you going to do with any of these fights? Neil Magny versus Yaroslav Amasov. Now, former Bellator champion coming over to the UFC. We're going to see if he can make a run here. He's going against the crafty Neil Magny. Now, he's definitely not in his prime coming over like a Aaron Pico or anything like that. And Neil Magny has just continued to get it done against, high-level prospects. Mike Mallet, and he was able to beat Jake Matthews last time out, which was just a crazy win where he almost got submitted, or basically did get submitted in the first round. The ref, called it back, and then he was able to craft his way to a submission of his own in the third round against Jake Matthews, which is a hard opponent for Neil Magny, a younger fighter who's been around for a long time, a lot of UFC experience. He's only really losing to guys that are just phenomenal strikers. Carlos Prates, Ian Gary, Michael Morales, Shavkat Rakhmonov submitted him, but, you're talking cream of the crop level fighters that Neil Magny's been losing to. Amasov's not on that level. Neil Magny may be able to craft this one out, but I'm just going to take Amasov. I think he's going to have a physical advantage, wrestling advantage, decent cardio, 3-rounder. I'll take Amasov to get the job done, but don't put him in a parlay because Neil Magny, he's cost me more money than I'd like to admit. Joanderson Brito has horrible fight IQ, and he's very overrated. Now, I'm going to take Isaac Thomson to beat him. I've never watched Isaac Thomson fight. Brito was supposed to fight Melsik Bagdasaryan, but look, these Australian guys half the time, they are well-rounded, and people are talking about this guy like he's really good. I haven't ran the tape, but, Brito, he let me down against Pat Sabatini. That was a horrible pick there, and just had horrible fight IQ, was trying to get guillotines, zero ability to work up from the bottom. And I know Pat Sabatini is like one of the best grapplers in the sport, but, didn't even have a good performance against William Gomis, who William Gomis is a good fighter at range, but I think Brito, we were talking about him in the featherweight division like he was a dark horse, but I just don't think that's the case. I think he had, some decent finishes, but he's just not really a fighter that's put together, and he just doesn't fight, with a decent game plan ever. So I'm going to fade him here. I'm going to take Isaac Thomson to, beat Brito. Also, give me my girl Gillian Robertson to beat Amanda Lemos. A Lemos, old, washed. Gillian Robertson, decent grappling, pretty aggressive for a WMMA fighter. I think she gets the job done. Oh, goodness. King Green, he got himself a fight versus Lance Gibson Jr. Now, I'm going to take King Green. Hopefully, his chin has recovered. It's scary, though, because he's old. He's definitely nowhere near the fighter he used to be. But, you can always count on him to have sharp boxing, good footwork, quick. Lance Gibson Jr. coming in on short notice. Give me King Green. He's been, looking to fight on this card, just needed the opponent. Gibson Jr., from what I saw on his record, he's not a bad fighter, but I will take King Green here. Bobby Green, King Green, Lord of Mercy. Next fight on the card, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Marcus Buchecha. Now, Buchecha didn't look too good against Martin Buday, who does have good defensive grappling and defensive BJJ. So it wasn't like Buchecha was easily able to take advantage of him in that regard, where he probably could against a lot of other heavyweights. But I don't think Kennedy is going to let that happen too easily. Kennedy is very strong, very athletic. He's been in the UFC for a good amount of time now. He hasn't fought too many good grapplers, but I think that he's going to be able to easily find a TKO finish here on the feet. He's the much better striker, hits very hard. He's pretty calculated on the feet, and I think he's going to be able to find a pretty easy counter shot, knock out Marcus Buchecha, where, Buchecha in the Buday fight, he had time to kind of try to build into the fight, kind of try to, get sloppy takedowns. He didn't have to worry about too much on the feet. If he's not able to get this fight to the mat in the first round, he's going to get knocked out by Kennedy. So that's going to be my pick. I'm going to take Kennedy Nzechukwu to win via first round TKO. All right. Now, I'll go a little bit more into depth for this fight here because I do have a bet on this fight. I have Melky Costa minus 108. Pick 'em odds for a unit. And, you know, I like him to win this fight here versus Morgan Charriere, where I bet Morgan Charriere in his last fight. He didn't let me down, but I didn't like the performance against Nate Landwehr, where Landwehr, he has good wins, like against Ludovic Klein and Emmers and stuff like that, but, you know, the way that Morgan Charriere was getting behind on the numbers and the work rate was just not something I liked to see. His significant strike numbers on a minute-to-minute basis isn't too bad, but that's because a lot of the times when he's getting finishes, he just kind of barrages guys like he did in the third round versus Nate Landwehr. But he was arguably down 2 rounds against Nate Landwehr, and it's the volume and just the kind of the work rate that gets to him. And even his wins in the UFC, the body kick TKO in his debut, the knockout win versus Gabriel Miranda, these aren't great wins. Lost to Shepe, lost to Nathaniel Wood, and I think that Melky Costa can kind of have similar success to what Nathaniel Wood did. I think Costa's going to have a BJJ advantage. He's gotten submission wins in the UFC, decent back-taking ability, and also Morgan Charriere on the feet. He does look for the big power shots, winging hooks, big step-through combinations. He has a good right calf kick. He'll dig the calf kick, but Melky Costa, he's a southpaw, so I don't think that calf kick is going to be as available for Charriere. Costa has really good body kicks from that southpaw stance. He'll sting you to the body. He'll bring it upstairs to the head. The striking is improving on a fight-to-fight basis. Did get knocked out by Steve Garcia, but Steve Garcia, I think, is a top 5 featherweight in the world, and he's a fucking problem for a lot of people, and he hits like a truck. So I'm not going to take too much away from Costa for losing that fight, and he's looked good in his last 3 performances. Submitted Andre Philly. He was touching him up on the feet, and that's kind of why Philly went for the grappling, tried to catch the kick, ended up getting submitted in a guillotine. I think that, if Costa's piecing up Charriere with the body kicks at range, with the jab at range, and Charriere, kind of tries to force wrestling, I could see Costa, snatching up a guillotine in a similar fashion. I like the performance against C-Rod. Was getting taken down by a lot of foot sweeps in that fight, but, did enough with the volume on the feet against C-Rod, who's a guy that's a volume striker for the most part as well. And, his cardio held up there. That was in Mexico at elevation, so I'd like to see the cardio held up in a high volume fight versus C-Rod. And last time out had an absolute dogfight versus Julian Erosa, an absolute scrap, and he showed me the toughness has improved. His volume's good. He's the younger fighter. I think that he has more momentum at this point. He wasn't down in his last fight. He's been pretty much dominating most of his recent fights, where Morgan Charriere, he's kind of having to clutch a TKO against the older, Nate Landwehr. Got dropped versus Nathaniel Wood. I could see Melky Costa, getting a knockdown in this fight. He's going to have the grappling edge, submission edge. So, yeah, I like Melky Costa here at Pick'em odds. I think he wins here against Morgan Charriere. I'll pick him by decision. And, I think the body kick volume will be good for him. He can threaten the submissions if he needs to. I don't think Charriere's calf kick is going to be there for him. And, I think Costa gets the job done here. He's improving on a fight-to-fight basis. I like him to win this one. All right, next fight on the card. Cesar Almeida versus Cesare Oleksiejczuk. Don't have a bet on this fight, but I'm going to be picking Oleksiejczuk to win this one. Now, I think people are overhyping him. I wasn't too impressed by the Contender Series performance. It was all right, and he does have some, good regional scene wins. The boxing's solid. He's well-rounded enough to mix in grappling if he needs to, and he's a fight finisher for sure. Similar to his brother in a couple different ways, similar boxing patterns and tendencies. Cesar Almeida, on the other hand, Brazilian kickboxer, fights like it too. Good jab, good body shots, good calf kicks, and former Glory kickboxer. he's done all right in the UFC. You know, he lost to Roman Kopylov by decision, where it was a split decision, pretty close fight. Knocked out, I think it was Dylan Buchecha in his UFC debut, and had a nasty TKO win on the first card of this year, actually. Dern versus Ribas, he had a nasty left hook counter shot to knock out Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Hasn't fought since the first card of the year, but he's coming back for the last card of the year, which is pretty funny. But he has been out because he was injured. He did hurt his knee. I don't know if that was in training or in the fight, but he did hurt his knee, and I don't like that for him. He's probably fully recovered, but still, I don't like a fighter coming in off of a bad injury like that, especially at his age. I'm pretty sure, you know, he's like 37, 38 at this point. Also, gets knocked down a lot in his fights. Roman Kopylov knocked him down. Abdul Razak Al Hassan knocked him down. And he's a guy that has taken a lot of damage, not only in MMA getting dropped, but in kickboxing. You know, he's a weathered fighter for sure. I think that Cezary Oleksiejczuk pushes the pace, lands some good shots upstairs, good headshots at range, where Cesar Almeida stands a little upright, doesn't have great head movement all the time. I think Cezary is going to land on him with the boxing, probably mix in some takedowns, get a ground and pound TKO in the first or second round. So yeah, give me Cezary Oleksiejczuk by TKO here over Cesar Almeida. All right, the last two fights on this card, I do have a parlay of the two fighters, and you know, it's going to be Kevin Vellejos and Manel Kape. Got it at plus 105, and you know, I like those odds. These guys have gotten a little bit heavier of favorites, but I'm going to explain why I like them to win, and I got 2.5 units on that. So we're looking to end the year strong. 1 unit on Manel Kape, or not 1 unit on Manel Kape, 1 unit on Melky Costa, pick 'em odds, and then 2.5 on Kevin and Kape. But yeah, Kevin Vellejos versus Giga Chikadze. Look, Kevin is going to be the more explosive fighter. He's younger, he's faster, he has all of the momentum, just purely based off of projection. He should win this fight. Giga Chikadze lost to David Onama last time out. I hated the performance, looked terrible in that fight. And David Onama is a guy that doesn't even bring as many threats to the table as Kevin Vellejos. Kevin Vellejos, he has nasty boxing, nasty power. He can mix in the grappling if he needs to. We saw that in his last fight. And Giga, he's an older fighter that's been suffering with injuries. He does have kickboxing ability, but you know, no real knockout threat unless it's like with a body kick, which I don't see happening against Kevin Vellejos. He's good at range, but if you pressure him against the fence, you can unload on him with the boxing. We saw Arnold Allen do that. We saw David Onama hurt him on a couple of occasions. The takedown defense is very, very poor, very, very unathletic from Giga Chikadze. And I think Kevin Vellejos is going to be able to go in there, and it's going to look like him versus Choi, where he just measures his range for a little bit, catches a few kicks, defends a few kicks, and then as soon as he gets him behind the black line, just unload with a nasty boxing combination and finish him. Kevin's also tough as nails, went 3 rounds with John Silva in an absolute dogfight on the Contender Series. And I didn't hate the performance last time out versus Danny Silva. Mixing the grappling there, he's showing improvements on a fight-to-fight basis. I think his cardio is decent. I don't think it's bad enough to where he's going to get finished in the 3rd round or anything like that. If he maybe adrenaline dumps, almost getting a finish versus Giga. And Giga's a fighter that I think knows his time is up. The fight game's kind of passed him by. And, you know, decent jab, decent body kicks, switch stance combinations a little bit. But at this point, he's just kind of slow. He hasn't had a good win in years. I mean, his last win was against Alex Caceres, and that was like a close fight. Alex Caceres isn't even in the UFC anymore. Kevin Vellejos is 3-1 for a reason. He should definitely win this fight wherever it goes. Finish, decision. Kevin Vellejos is the right side to be on here. Unless he just really gets behind on volume and he's trying to force things and he's running into kicks. Giga just doesn't really have that type of power. I see Kevin Vellejos being firmly in control of this fight for 15 minutes and winning a clean decision, 30-27. So yeah, give me Kevin Vellejos, 30-27 decision or 3rd round TKO. All right, our last fight of 2025, Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape. You know, I think it's just fitting for the last Apex headliner for ESPN Plus to be a flyweight main event. But you gotta love it. High level fight here, Manel Kape versus Brandon Royval. Look, I like Brandon Royval, but Manel Kape I think is going to absolutely school him and probably finish him by TKO in the second or third round. Look, I picked against Royval against Joshua Van, and I was right there. And I did not like how he looked against Joshua Van. You know, Joshua Van was ahead of him pretty much the entirety of that fight. Royval is good at putting numbers out there. Like, his significant strike numbers are really good, landed per minute. Manel's not far behind him, though, because Manel has been being a lot better recently about staying active and staying, you know, high volume with his striking. And Royval, his striking is a lot of pit-pat, a lot of nothing, a lot of, you know, throwing stuff just to throw stuff, light tappy jabs, light tappy inside low kicks, not a lot of sting on the shots. And, you know, when you're fighting a Brandon Moreno who's kind of stuck in the mud and tired, that works. Or against a Tatsudo Taira who was, you know, absolutely gassed and hadn't had a lot of experience on the feet, you can get away with that and win. And he's had some good wins in the UFC. He's a tenured vet in the flyweight division. You know, he's fought for the belt against Pantoja, but in this matchup, it's just not good for him because, yeah, he does have submission ability, but he's not getting Manel Kape down to the ground. He's just not. Manel Kape has excellent takedown defense. So this is going to be a stand-up battle. And I think Manel Kape is the best flyweight striker on the roster, and I don't think it's even close. He's so fucking fast twitch. Like, his ability to just, you know, dart in, land 5 or 6 hooks, dart out, come in, front kick, knee, 3-piece combination on the feet. You know, his speed is just absolutely unmatched. And look, Brandon Royval, he was getting boxed up by Joshua Van, who Joshua Van, he has clean boxing, but I think that Manel Kape is just far more accurate. He's way quicker to the mark. He finds your chin, you know, so dynamically in a variety of ways. He cuts angles super good. He can mix in the kicks. He's got nice Muay Thai, you know, techniques with the knees and the elbows. I think Brandon Royval is going to get touched up in this fight. I see him getting dropped on multiple occasions. Royval, you know, he's tough, and he kind of reminds me of like a Nate Diaz type of fighter, but he eats damage, man. He doesn't have great defense, where Manel Kape, he's so good at like seeing shots coming. His reaction time is just next level. And I think that Royval showed in his last fight versus Joshua Van that the reaction time and the defense might be slipping a little bit. And, you know, he's not even an older fighter, but I just think he's kind of plateaued. I think that Manel Kape is still getting better. I think he's, you know, roided to the teeth. You got to always be a little bit weary about him getting injured in the offseason and pulling out of fights, and maybe he breaks his toe like he did in the Mikaya fight, where, you know, if he doesn't get injured there, he probably wins that fight. You know, it's hard because he's a little bit inconsistent at times, but when he's firing on all cylinders, Manel Kape is just not a guy I'm going to pick against in the flyweight division. I would have picked him against Pantoja. I'll pick him right now against Joshua Van or Taira. I think Manel Kape probably touches gold in this division now that Pantoja is hurt. I think he would beat Joshua Van pretty handily by knockout. So yeah, give me Manel Kape. I think he's the best fighter in this division. The speed's unmatched, the striking combinations. It's going to be, you know, much more advantageous for Manel in this fight. He's more athletic. I think his chin's probably better at this point. You know, I think his cardio is going to be just fine. He went 4 rounds with Asu Amabayev, putting on a heavy pace in that fight. Give me Manel Kape to win this fight. And, yeah, I think he fights for gold pretty soon. I think they'll do Taira versus Van, but, yeah, give me Manel Kape versus the winner of Taira versus Van, and I'll pick Manel Kape to win that fight. So, yeah, give me Manel Kape to win the last fight of 2025. If you guys enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree with any of my takes. And yeah, my bets for the card: Melky Costa pick'em odds, Kevin Vellejos, Manel Kape in a 2-team parlay plus 105. Thank you guys for watching.